Leslie, first, thank you so much for doing this interview with me. But more importantly, thank you so much for this amazing, informative, and entertaining series. Let's get right to the meat and potatoes. For folks who don't know what's going on, what is this series called and what is it about? And how does it represent true Canadian history?
Yeah, so the series is called Black Life, Untold Stories. It's an 8-part documentary series that looks at the Black experience in Canada. And we're looking at multiple experiences. We're talking and learning from people from across the country about the experiences of being Black in Canada from a historical lens.
How do you think this differs from US history that we see all the time?
Mm-hmm. Well, one, you see Black US history. In Canada, we don't. As someone who's grown up in Canada, who did all of her schooling in Canada, much of the stories and the histories that we cover in the series were unknown to me, which is sad and shocking. That it took me having to make a documentary series to learn about the history of Black people in Canada. So yeah, I think that's a big difference, is that the Americans, despite the tumultuous history that they have, it's at least it's acknowledged, and we don't do that here.
Is that how the idea came up to do this? And by the way, thumbs up to CBC for the fact that they're not just putting this on during Black History Month, they're just putting this on.
Yes, 100%. Well, as many of our amazing academics and historians mention in the series, Black history is Canadian history, so there's no reason to just air it during Black History Month. This is important stories that should be told any time of the year. So yeah, but I think part of the impetus for doing the show was to really kind of acknowledge that Black people have been here. Our stories are important, because growing up in Canada, I didn't feel recognized as a Canadian. So I guess some of this is me working through my own personal traumas, to kind of feel recognized and experiences being validated.
I'm probably twice as old as you, so I get what you're talking about, absolutely. And one of the things, and I want to ask how you break down the episodes, but one of the things that I loved about the first episode, and I want to give too much away, there's a certain promo that is played about Canadian life, if you want to call it that. It's something I remember seeing as a kid on television, looking at it one way growing up. Now I look at that a different way. Was that sort of the feeling in being able to, when you talk to the people that were involved in each episode on their vision of Canada, the way they saw it, the way they experienced, than say the way it was televised throughout the world?
Yeah, I think Alicia K. Harris, the director of the first episode, really kind of was going through a bunch of amazing old travelogue footage of Canada. And as you allude to, we won't give it away, but what you kind of some visual representations of what you think Canada is and how we as Canadians kind of understand ourselves. And I think it was really important to kind of, for her and for us as a team, to kind of really kind of shake that up, really kind of dismantle this kind of idea of what people think it means to be Canadian, because the story that we've been telling ourselves and the story that we've been telling the world is not actually what it means to be Canadian. It's a very, very small kind of portion of the country, a country and its peoples that we've kind of acknowledged as Canadians. And so, yeah, that first kind of tease is really to kind of shake up the audiences and kind of dismantle that notion.
It's not just be Canadian, it's growing up in Canada and being an adult immigrant and coming to Canada. And what I loved about what you folks did was, I remember the stories my parents told. I remember the stories that when my parents' friends came together and they told. As a child, didn't understand, but growing up and as an adult, completely understand and craving more. And I think one of the biggest important things that you guys are doing is the fact that as I was growing up, I could only find those stories through them. Now you're doing it through a proper lens.
Yeah, which is really, really exciting. And I think, I kind of alluded to that previously, is that, as someone who grew up here, it's really, really upsetting that it's, taken, how many ever years to kind of really find that history. And so hopefully this is, a step for people to really acknowledge those histories, to be excited
Good or
to go out
bad,
and
good or bad, good or bad.
exactly, because a lot of it is not good. A lot of it is bad. There was slavery here in Canada. We have like never really reckoned with that as a country. That there was slavery in Canada for years, for like over a century. Like, so this is like, these are things that we need to grapple with as a country. And it really is, I think, important, an important tool, hopefully, for people who look like me, who look like you, to like have something that they can go to kind of, better understand that experience, being Black and living here in Canada. Yeah, and especially because it's on our nation's broadcaster. So.
And we always consider family as heroes for us, but what you portray also, there are heroes of names we've never heard of. I think that's extremely important too.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the name of the series, Black Life Untold Stories. We often only hear one or two stories about what it means to be Black in Canada, or the Black experience in Canada. The one that we've all know is that Black folks came up during escaping slavery in the Underground Railroad. And that, and then that's it. You don't hear about the communities they created, the lives that they created. You don't understand, the hardships that they faced. None of that is ever addressed. And so I think it's really important, if we're really to kind of understand who we are as Canadians, is to really kind of understand that in a more deeper way.
No, absolutely. How are the episodes broken down?
So there are 8 episodes, and each episode is directed by a different Black Canadian director. And they started off being organized thematically, but then we obviously narrowed the stories down. So we have 8 episodes. Episodes that range from stories about enslavement in Canada, about the Black liberation movement in Quebec and Halifax. We also have the episode on hip hop music here in Canada and the struggle for commercial recognition. We have stories about the migrant and immigrant experience. We also have episodes on sports, policing, and justice as well. We look at the arts as well. We look at 6 unknown or not as well known artists, filmmakers, artists, and writers. And then we also have, oh my gosh, was that 8?
I think that was
We have,
8.
yeah,
If
okay.
not, that's okay. That's okay, because then if it's not 8, they can still tune in to find out what the 8th one was. So
Exactly,
that works.
exactly.
You know, my favorite most likely would be the hip hop one. And the reason why is because of course, lately for a lot of these young kids, they think hip hop started with Drake and, you know, The Weeknd. I love how you paced where really the history was coming from, and I think, and that's an amazing thing. Um, how did you feel about putting you know, seeing that one and putting that together? Because, like I said, I thought, especially with the 50-year celebration of hip hop, what a way to help celebrate that with this episode.
Yeah, so I think again, just going back to the thesis of the series, we're trying to tell untold stories, and I think everybody has an entry point into the story of like hip hop music, or knows about hip hop music, or knows, as you say, like Drake and The Weeknd are some of the biggest music artists in the world. And so, for us, it was, and the director of this episode, Will Prosper, it was really, really important to kind of like find that unknown or untold nugget of that
Mhm.
history. And for Black hip hop artists, that was the struggle for commercial recognition was huge. There was no commercial radio playing music. There were no commercial record labels here. The reason that hip hop was able to thrive and prosper in Canada, or thrive anyways in Canada, was through community radio, was through like independent labels. And so there's actually one of our interviewees really has like a really great point, that there's no infrastructure to support a Drake or a Weeknd or a Justin Bieber, because they didn't set that up when hip hop was coming up in Canada. So yeah, it was really kind of like trying to find that untold nugget. And even though this is like the biggest musical genre in the world, really trying to find that untold story.
Yeah, I grew up on WBLK, so folks, old school folks would understand that. As we wrap this up, what are you hoping our audience, Black, white, Indigenous, it doesn't matter, what do you hope that this audience is going to take from this series?
I hope they take away an excitement to kind of like learn more about the Black Canadian experience. I hope they take away and a curiosity, to kind of go out and seek out some of those stories, to seek out those histories. There are books, there are films, there are other things outside of the series that have been talking about the Black experience in Canada, and hope they're excited by that. And I also hope that they take away that there's a lot of work still to be done here in Canada. We claim we're a safe haven for Black folks, but we see that in this series that's not true. So really hope that people really want to work to make Canada the Canada that we say that we are.
Absolutely. Look, there's a reason why as a kid I learned how to fight. So there's a particular reason why. Thank you so much for this series. Congratulations on it. And I'm crossing fingers that there's a part 2 to this for another season. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you, Rudy.